Hello and welcome to episode 15 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Boo Ray, singer-songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee. He's also a great guitar player. He's an old friend of mine. We've been through a lot together. It was great to finally get to sit down with him in his living room. It was at the crack of dawn. He's an early morning riser, so I went to his place after playing the night before in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He made a pot of coffee, and you can hear our coffee cups banging on his coffee table through the whole interview. I didn't realize the mics were picking it up, and I think it's kind of hilarious. I have been touring really heavily. Pinky Doodle Poodle did a big run-up through the Midwest. We did Nashville, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and we did Louisville, Kentucky, and Indianapolis, and Chicago, Illinois. I'm home for about 36 hours. It's just long enough to record this intro, buy some groceries, maybe make some bread for the family, wash my socks, and hit the road again. Our Chicago show was at a thing called the PRF Barbecue. If you're not familiar, you should go to prfbbq.com and check it out. The PRF Barbecue is a music and arts festival. You buy an advance ticket, and then you get 4 days of bands, barbecue, and beverages, and it's just a great time. Most of the shows I think all of the shows are recorded and archived at prfbbq.com for posterity, so the Pinky Doodle Poodle set will be up there along with all the other great bands. After seeing all the great sets at the PRF Barbecue, I was inspired to start a new feature of the program. If you go to our social media page, our Facebook page or Twitter account, or however you sort of keep track of what Crash and Ride is doing, there's going to be a link to a Spotify playlist I'm going to create. It's going to have a bunch of the bands from the PRF Barbecue on it this week, including one of my favorites. There's a band from South Bend, Indiana called the Rutabaga. It's a duo, Josh and Garth, and they make some of the most emotionally powerful music I've ever heard. Their anthem, Turn on the Summer, it is one of the greatest things I've ever heard, and I put it on the playlist so you can hear it too. There will undoubtedly be some other PRF bands on this week's playlist and future playlists. I'm also going to, on this week's playlist, backfill some of the music by guests we've already had. Sam Paulson's two bands, Man or Astro Man and We vs. the Shark, that are both on Spotify, will be represented. I'd love to have put Mean Queen on, but they're not on Spotify. That's Sam's other band if you listen to episode 14 from last week. I'm also going to have a multi-cult song on. That was Jake Kreger, our first guest on the show ever. Episode 10, we had Evan Rowe, and his band Maple Stave will be on there. Episode 5 was Grant Curry. He's the bass player of the band Pleasure Club. I'm going to have one of their songs on. I think a Spotify playlist of whatever I've been listening to this week and what bands we've played with on the road, it might be fun for everybody. And it'll just be part of what you get if you check the show notes or go to the Patreon page if you're a fan of the podcast. Speaking of fans of the podcast, I was stunned to discover this week that Crash and Ride, the podcast, has been nominated for this big grant by the Swedish record company called Radio Union. They've started a thing called the 73%.com. When someone at that label discovered that they'd done a study and 73% of musicians have struggled with issues of mental illness or mental health, depression, anxiety, etc. And they had an open call that they're going to create this big grant fund for mental health services for musicians, and I sort of threw my hat in the ring and got advanced to the sort of voting stage. So if you're a friend of mine on Facebook, you've probably seen the announcement that you can go to their page at 73%.com and vote for Crash and Ride. And if we get to the finals, they're gonna write us a check, which I'll buy a Apogee Duo, so I'm not hauling my full-size Scarlett recording interface around in a flight case on tour, and I'll probably buy some little bit nicer mics and maybe buy some groceries. It would be incredible. So yeah, if you want to support the podcast, go to our Facebook page or go to our social media account on Twitter or whatever, and follow the links and vote for us. I mean, I would be in your debt forever. Speaking of debt, no touring band, especially one that flies on a shoestring budget like, well, every band I've ever been in except the Psychedelic Furs and the Mike Bills thing. Every band sort of lives by the kindness of strangers, and I've slept on more floors in the last 2 weeks, or more couches, or people's spare bedrooms, and I just want to do a quick shout-out to all the people who are supporting Pinky Doodle Poodle and all the other bands I play in by being so kind to us on the road. Thank you so much. The next few weeks are going to be no less busy for me. Here are some dates for Pinky Doodle Poodle and 5/8. We're playing, Pinky Doodle Poodle is playing June 15th at the 8th State Brewing Company in Greenville, South Carolina. Pinky Doodle Poodle is playing June 18th at the Georgia Theater in Athens, Georgia. June 19th, Pinky Doodle Poodle will play at Snug Harbor in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's the third of the 4-show month-long residency we've been doing in Charlotte. June 20th, Pinky Doodle Poodle will be playing at the Flagpole Music Awards. We're going to play a few shows at the Morton Theater that night. June 21st, I am playing 3 shows in one day. The first show will be at the Caledonia Lounge with Pinky Doodle Poodle at 10 p.m. I will then grab my stick bag, my kick drum pedal, and my cymbals and literally run up the sidewalk to the Georgia Theater to play at 11 p.m. with 5/8. And then after the 5/8 show, I will take a nice leisurely walk down the hill to the Go Bar, and I will play with Pinky Doodle Poodle at 1 a.m. So, yeah, it goes Caledonia, Georgia Theater, Go Bar. Then June 22nd, 5/8 is playing the Caledonia Day Party at 6:30 p.m. here in Athens, Georgia. June 25th, Pinky Doodle Poodle is playing at Slim's in Raleigh, North Carolina. June 26th, Pinky Doodle Poodle is playing our final show of the 4-show run at Snug Harbor in Charlotte. June 27th, Pinky Doodle Poodle plays Reggie's, 42nd Street Tavern in Wilmington, North Carolina. June 29th, Pinky Doodle Poodle plays Monster Code. Is that what that place is called? In Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then July 4th, we're playing at Altered Frequencies in Franklin, North Carolina. So that's a lot of shows for PDP and 5/8. I've got some big news coming about the Mike Mills Concerto for the fall. Can't quite release that yet, but it's going to be, 2019's been my busiest year as a player in a long time. I got a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your local music retailer today. Crash and Ride is also sponsored in part by Jittery Joe's. They've created a special espresso blend just for the show. They roast each batch by hand. Man, it's good coffee. The Crash and Ride espresso is soon going to be available everywhere. Just give us a minute. I've got some cans with me on the road if you want to grab some at one of the shows. There'll be a web store for Crash and Ride up soon. I'm going to have some t-shirts and stuff there. But, man, I haven't had time to work on anything. I've been playing so many shows. Also, remember, if you're struggling with thoughts of self-harm, if you're having really dark days and you need some help, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. It's 24/7. It's confidential. It's free. They've helped so many of my friends. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. Before we jump into today's show, this is probably the most 12-step heavy interview I've done. I don't make a big secret of the fact that I'm a recovering person. I've had a couple of guests before who didn't want to talk about it. There are provisions for anonymity in the traditions of the program. I don't want to drag anybody down that secret society rabbit hole too far if they're not interested in going. But, Boo and I talked before the show, and, the 12-step thing has been a big part of what keeps him sane and keeps him going. And, he thought it was important to include that. So if you're a 12-step person and you're outraged that we both violated our anonymity, crashandride@protonmail.com is my email address. You're welcome to send me any hate mail there. But everybody's program is personal to them. And, that's just how we decided to roll this time. I think there's something in that interview for anyone who's ever suffered from depression and anxiety or just felt like their life was out of control. So I'm really proud of this interview. So anyway, let's jump into our interview with Boo Ray. All right, I'm here with Boo Ray. This is one of the interviews I've been looking forward to doing for some time. Boo Ray is a singer-songwriter based out of Nashville, also fine guitar player, an old friend of mine. You've lived in Asheville, right?
Well, yeah, Cullowhee, Cashers, grew up there.
Yeah, in Athens for a long time.
Yeah, and got a driver's license. When I got my driver's license, it was a great place to grow up in Western North Carolina. And then once I got a driver's license, I was like get me off this damn mountain.
And then Los Angeles for a while, or Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, Athens, and then Los Angeles, and then Nashville.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now?
Writing my ass off. I'm sort of manically writing for myself, project I've got coming up, and also a really smoking hot guitar player buddy who's fresh in Nashville from Pennsylvania. and he's just a prolific player and troubadour, and is it's just at an interesting point in his career. Is he is arming himself with sort of his identifying body of material. So he's sort of, I mean, he's a incredible songwriter in his own right. But he didn't have necessarily a body of material that was like, hey, this is who I am. And we met, and he's been arming himself with sort of 6 Weeks in a Motel, Bad News Travels Fast type of songs that are character identifying type of songs, that you can hang your hat on. And
those are both from your record, 6 Weeks in a Motel.
Yes, yes.
That came out when?
6 Weeks in a Motel. Well, the first one, 2010. That was that record that I released out of the damn halfway house behind New West. A Bad News Travels Fast record.
Right.
Both those songs were off that record. I keep recording songs off that record to give them a fair shake production-wise.
Yeah, so for viewers or listeners who aren't in Athens, Georgia, New West Records is the only label I know that's a half a block from a halfway house. That's in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
And we'll get to your time there, I think, before the interview's over for sure. But let's so Bad News Travels Fast came out 2010.
Yeah.
And then 6 Weeks in a Motel was 2 years later?
Yeah, it was 10 to 2012. Yes, exactly right. Yes, which was a title track that I pulled off the previous record, yes.
And then there's been 2 records since, right?
Yes, 2 full-length LPs. And then also, for me personally, a big highlight in there was that Caroline Aiken recorded Broken Wings Heal in 2015 off of the 6 Weeks in a Motel record as the title track to her 2015 record.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I love her. I think she's a fabulous guitar player.
Her story's kind of amazing too.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I consider her, at 60 some years old, she's playing more than 100 days a damn year.
I mean, she's killing it.
Just killing it. Just absolutely slaying it. Yeah.
So the 2 records, 2 full lengths, and then you had a series of singles collaborations with some Nashville artists. Talk to me about that a little bit.
We calling it Buku Amigos. And yeah, it's sort of the basic cocktail napkin sketch of the idea is that we record a clever cover on the B side, and we write an original A side to accompany the cover, making for light work and not too much heavy lifting for all parties concerned.
And there's been 4 of those?
3 of them. There was the Christmas single with Elizabeth Cook.
And that had the Dolly and Kenny cover on the backside?
No, that was the one with Lily Winwood.
Right. Sorry.
No, all good. So Elizabeth Cook and I had a damn Christmas single, and then Lily Winwood and I covered the Dolly Kenny song, which is actually a damn Bee Gees song.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Islands in the Stream's a damn Bee Gees song. That's how I got to that song. I had gone down the damn rabbit hole of the Grease soundtrack. And landed on Islands in the Stream.
That's great.
And then I did a couple of guitar slinging numbers with my buddy Sean Brock.
Sean from Husk, right?
Yes.
He was good friends with Anthony Bourdain.
He cut his teeth in Athens, Georgia, too.
I didn't know that.
He got tattooed by Mitchell Atkinson at damn Jittery Joe's. How about that shit?
I didn't know that either.
Right.
That's wild.
That's how we found each other. It's for a hashtag of Mitchell Atkinson.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that's good, right?
Part of what inspired this podcast was what to me was the totally unexpected suicide of Anthony Bourdain. And I remember watching him and Sean sitting in a Waffle House. I don't know if you've ever seen that video.
Yeah, I have seen it.
It's brilliant.
It's
beautiful.
Brilliant.
But yeah, that's wild. Lily Winwood, is she related to Stevie Winwood?
She is. She's the daughter of.
Wow. And she's a singer-songwriter living here in Nashville.
Amazing singer-songwriter.
So you've got a direct to vinyl recording project. Can we talk about that, or is it too
Sure, no, we can talk about that. So, yeah, Pete Lyman, who's the mastering engineer, has been finishing our records for a few years now, who's got, Pete Lyman he's wildly successful and popular right now. Because he masters all the Dave Cobb records, including Sturgill Simpson, Chris Stapleton, Rival Sons, Isabel. Yeah, he does all those records. And we just lucked out and got him. We started working with him sort of before he became ultra successful. We started working with Pete in like 2015 or so, and he was just about to become wildly successful. But Noah Shane found him, and working with Pete has been a key ingredient of us being able to get the grease that we're getting on these recordings to actually transfer and translate on the final process without the records getting too slick. You know? And Pete's just got this masterful light touch. He's just known for it. His light touch is just uncanny.
And you guys are going to set up and do a straight to vinyl.
So Pete's a SoCal biker,
right?
And
does he ride with a particular club?
Pasadena, it's a Pasadena bike club, south of Pasadena bike club. I can't remember exactly, but being a SoCal biker, he's got a damn attitude,
right?
And so there's two people in Nashville doing direct to vinyl recordings at a high level, and that's Jack White and Welcome 1979, and Pete's response to that is, oh hell no, I've been doing this longer than both y'all put together. So he's coming over the top with his thing, and he partners in his production house studio he partners with Reed Shippen, who's a monster engineer and producer. And these guys, Reed and Pete, have gone so far off the deep end, they knocked a damn hole in the bottom of the house and poured an entirely separate foundation just for the record cutting lathe.
That's amazing.
I'm totally excited to work with Reed.
Don't you love the way we ease into things?
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
So you're originally from North Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
You grew up in the Cashers area?
Yeah. Went to grade school in Cullowhee. Yeah. Carpooled 25 miles each way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, I'm from not far from there in the Piedmont. And,
right.
And it could be kind of chaotic in the world of mill workers and
sure,
and
plant workers and stuff. Yeah.
My grandparents were the sort of rock in my life though when I was growing up.
Yeah, I was lucky. My mom's dad, who had two unruly daughters, and his wife, my grandmother Mamie, was wonderful. I was real fond of her, and he took beautiful care of her too. But his daughters were just completely unruly, and did whatever the hell they wanted. So my granddad Cornelius Joseph was damn tickled to death when a little boy came along. So I got the benefit of that. He was super sweet to me and took up a bunch of time with me when I was a kid. Yeah. He was a wonderful guy.
When did you start playing guitar?
15 or so.
Yeah. Was your family musical?
Nah. We listened to music, and I had access to a couple of expert vinyl collections during my childhood.
Right.
My cousin Buck had an amazing vinyl collection that was very well curated, and then also.
What was he listening to?
Well, he ran the gamut. He listened to all the standard classics and standard singer-songwriter stuff of the 60s and 70s, and then he also branched out. He was a rock expert too, so like Cheap Trick, from Buck, I heard everything from Cheap Trick to Dwight Yoakam's cover of Cheap Trick,
right,
to Thin Lizzy. That's where I first got turned on to Thin Lizzy.
Man, every time I listen to a full-length Thin Lizzy LP, I'm like, this is so good.
I love what that guy did. Phil Lynott.
Right.
He was asked in an interview, and I had been listening to his records for years, and then I came across this interview that he did, and he was asked in the interview, and I'm going to paraphrase and butcher the hell out of this, but he said he was asked something like, if you could choose how you were to be remembered, what would you choose to have be remembered for and by, and how would you choose to have people speak of the work you've done as a singer-songwriter in a musical act? And he said, Phil Lynott said something to the effect of, well, I hope we've got some decent songs, and then I would like to be remembered for a hard-working band that dug in and really did some cutting-edge guitar playing. And I just thought that was the coolest, most humble statement, because he's not even a damn guitar player. He's a bass player.
Right.
But that's what he wanted his band to be remembered for, is all that beautiful twin guitar playing.
Those guitar harmonies are absolutely brilliant.
Crazy about that stuff.
The melody line of the vocals, though, in The Boys Are Back in Town, like the chorus is this big rockin' feel-good thing, and then if you listen closely to the way that the vocal melody falls in pitch through the chorus of the verse, there's a melancholy to it. And I remember the day that it struck me that there's like an element of sadness in that song, and it just changed the whole way I listened to it.
His B-sides, She Knows, Showdown, Still in Love with You, mm-hmm. Those songs, like his B-sides completely do it for me. Mm-hmm. The hits are great.
Right.
Like you mentioned, Boys Are Back in Town,
Jailbreak.
Whiskey in a Jar.
Yeah.
There's a couple, Jailbreak. Mm-hmm. There's a couple big significant hits. The B-side stuff from him, and I absolutely also love all the Catholic symbology in his stuff. It just totally does it for me.
Was your family religious?
Yeah, well, no, I was damn sure Irish Catholic.
Right.
I remember that. I remember the fuss that occurred over whether or not I was going to be baptized Catholic or not.
Oh boy.
My mom conceded to my grandfather's will on that, and I was baptized Catholic. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So, we weren't ultra religious, though. Yeah. I could kind of take it or leave it a little bit, but there was a few years where I was like, get your ass in the car. We're going to church.
Right. I interrupted you in the middle of there were two vinyl collectors in your childhood. There was Uncle Buck.
Oh, my cousin Buck.
Cousin Buck, sorry.
And I had a cousin Freddie. Uh-huh. He was Freddie killed himself. Oh man. But he's a Vietnam vet. But he had an amazing collection also. He had Freddie had all the Pink Floyd in its entirety, and I remember those records used to blow my damn mind as a kid.
Yeah. The Wall was a really important record to me, and there's people who will say that after Syd Barrett left, that Pink Floyd kind of lost it. But I came to it really young. I was 11 when The Wall came out, and it was the sort of soundtrack for my incredibly dysfunctional adolescence. So I was deep in that record, and then didn't really connect with the Syd Barrett stuff because I didn't do psychedelics until much later. So didn't really see the point, but. There are people throwing their listening devices at the wall now. For
the blasphemy of
not being a Syd guy.
Yeah.
So, was your mom a single mom?
Yes, for a year or two. We lived in my granddad's basement. We lived in my granddad's basement for a few years, Sarah. When my mom remarried when I was like 2 or 3, so it was just a short time.
Right.
She divorced my dad. I guess I was like 2. Mm-hmm. and remarried. She met my dad, who raised me, who was a wonderful guy. He was a Southern California cowboy.
Right. So your stepdad.
Yes, he was my stepdad. We just never did the adoption papers.
Right.
But yeah, he was great, man. And so I got the benefit of growing up with this whole other skill set that I might not have otherwise had it not been for him, in becoming a horseman and learning how to handle livestock and
Right.
and sort of a bunch of antiquated skill sets,
Right. Right.
archaic shit nobody cares about.
Right. But it's interesting that we've talked about Southern California twice in this interview already, and it's a theme that I see coming through your music sometimes. Like there's a Southern California that existed before the film industry and exists completely outside of sort of the glitz and glamour of what people think of when they think of Southern California, and it's like Bakersfield, Central Valley, South, kind of dusty. There's definitely Hispanic influence, and I kind of hear that on some of your tracks, like that sort of post-war, pre-Hollywood California, and it sounds like your stepdad kind of comes right through there.
100%. Yeah, I love that area. So his dad, Turner was his name, and Turner's stepdad. So Turner's real father was an Air Force pilot, a transport pilot, who had just shuffled planes around, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. And he died in a damn plane wreck.
Oh man!
He died in a plane wreck in like, I guess in the 40s, and then his mother remarried, and she married this damn Danish cowboy named Sigvard Hansen. And Sigvard, so my stepdad's stepdad. Mm-hmm. And Sigvard was an incredible character. He left Copenhagen, Denmark at 12 years old, became a merchant seaman. Mm-hmm. A couple of years into being a merchant seaman, he just stayed. He just didn't get back on the boat in Costa Rica, and he stayed in Costa Rica for a year or two and learned the cattle business. And how to become a cow. He learned how to become a cowboy in Costa Rica. Once he had that under his belt, he went around to the West Coast and became a livestock wrangler on Hollywood movie sets.
That's amazing.
He was a cool guy.
There was another Scandinavian guy who was big in the Okie country music scene in the, I guess, late 50s, early 60s. He was the drummer. And for a second, I was thinking you were going to tell me that was Sigvard, but there was apparently some draw of Southern California for guys who were living in the land of ice and snow. That's wild, man. That sounds like a kind of not too insane childhood to be around big animals and.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful, man. It was absolutely wonderful. It was just perfect. So there's a couple things happened. The town, it's a small little bitty town. Mm-hmm. And I was, school was carpool 25 miles each way. And, pop culture just wasn't,
right.
It wasn't available even at the gas station. You know what I mean? Like there was no modern latest candy and that kind of thing. Like pop culture did not actually filter into the to the life of people living in Western North Carolina at that time. Mm-hmm. So when I got my driver's license, 15, 16, my response to living up there was basically get me off this damn mountain.
Right.
And so for me, it was a coin toss at that point in time. Asheville, North Carolina was a hour and 40 minutes southeast, and Athens, Georgia was hour and 40 minutes southwest. And really, it's just for a matter of a coin toss. I ended up going down to Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
which, looking back on it now, I am grateful for a number of reasons. One of which is that instead of getting a jam band immersion in Asheville, North Carolina,
Right.
I basically got a literate New York rock and roll education.
Yeah. It's funny. I used to tell people that when I moved to Athens, Georgia, it was as if someone had taken, 20, 30 blocks of the Lower East Side and just dropped it in a cornfield in Northeast Georgia.
For sure.
Because it was hip.
Yeah, it was hip as hell.
And there was an art. There was an aesthetic.
Totally had a look to it, and a look, and it was a series of books and movies and bands that went with the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Mo Tucker and all them were prevalent and visible on the scene back there. I remember Mo Tucker, when I first went down there, she was hanging out down there a bunch.
Did I tell you the story about dating one of her daughters?
Oh, no.
So I was 5'8", the band that I was in at the time was riding pretty high, and I met this really cute redheaded girl, and we went on a couple dates, and then at some point she said, well, my mom's a drummer. And man, I was so, so full of myself. I was like, oh yeah, did she play in church or something? She's like, no, she used to play in a band. I was like, oh yeah, what band? And she said, the Velvet Underground. And I just kind of came down off of my cloud so hard. I was like, you know what? I gotta go home for a little while.
Yeah, that's Athens, Georgia, as hell right there.
Yeah, it was humbling, man, and hilarious. But most still got family in Athens. Some kids living there, so it's cool. So when did the partying start? Was that part of your youth, or
partying started at 16, which is the year that all the menfolk in my whole family died. My dad killed my stepdad, the Southern California cowboy. He killed himself.
Whoa!
My real father.
What was up with that?
Hell, long story. My real father, who my mom divorced, and he was a gambler and a junkie, and he got killed down in Florida. And then my grandfather, Cornelius Joseph, my mom's dad, the Irishman, he died later that year, within 10 months of my stepdad's death. He was the first one of them. And then my cousin Freddie killed his damn self. And so I had this year where literally all the menfolk in my whole family died. And that was the summer that I got my my learner's permit.
Right.
And I went straight to the bottle, just instinctively. I knew what would fix that dilemma.
That pain.
Yeah.
Was there was your stepfather, did he just have long-term depression?
There's here's one thing that as I get older, one thing that I am beginning reserving judgment is something that I have begun to value greatly. And so, who knows how history goes down? I mean, here's what I'm saying. I have versions of what happened in my mind that allow me to assign blame to circumstances. Well, this all went down, and I don't approve of it, and it's your fault. And this version of my story backs that up.
Right.
And then there's other versions of the story where I see little peeps of light come in. Well, it might not have been quite like what you thought. It might be a little different than that. And then you get another possibility begins to show light. And possibility that maybe it's not quite what I thought it was. And so reserving judgment is something that I have come to value, and I sort of live, I think I live in a place of reserved judgment in that if you ask me at any given time, well, what's the verdict? And my answer is going to likely to be, well, hell, I'm not sure yet. You know,
Yeah.
Let's get some more information. And so I'm not trying to be evasive.
No, I understand.
You're asking me what went down with Turner, and yeah, there's different versions of the story,
Right.
and I don't necessarily know that. I don't necessarily know which version is the most valid. You know, who's to say, man? Hell, I don't know. You know, there were financial. There were significant financial pressures and difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
There were significant relationship and emotional situations, and I remember at a certain point in time, he got some vertigo a couple of years prior to that. So yeah, there was possible there was some mental brain function kind of issues. I mean, he was a brilliant guy. He was super kind and he was super kind and funny and self-effacing, real humble guy.
Right.
Is part of that Southern California cowboy code, you know, like
Right.
Above all things, you must never damn brag, you know,
Right.
like, and so those guys have this constant self-effacing cleverness about them. You know, there's, anyways, who really actually knows what went down?
So in one year, you lost your stepfather, your biological father,
Granddad, cousin Fred,
Cousin
and
Fred.
my uncle, who I didn't mention my uncle. I had an uncle who took an interest in me that was a super nice guy and smart and cool. He, yeah.
mother's brother.
A great uncle,
Okay.
father's brother.
Brother. And so all that pain kind of fired you off the mountain like a human cannonball.
Yeah, I just started drinking. I mean,
Yeah.
it just became cocktail hour,
Right.
full time.
The 24-hour cocktail hour.
Absolutely.
And you got to Athens and sort of dropped into the art and party culture of Athens of the 80s.
Even more of the just directly into the party culture. I don't know how much art I was involved
You were
in.
running around with a bunch of bikers at one point, as I recall.
Yeah. You know, I was aware. I was aware that I didn't get all the information that I was looking for at 16 years old. So there was still some stuff that I didn't quite know as a man. You know, shit, even down to like shaving and dating and stuff like that.
Right.
Like I just didn't have all the information. And as far as I could tell, I didn't. I was weary of hipsters, and I found a group of motorcycle people that I basically felt like I could take them at their word, and they were imperfect and flawed individuals, but they were loyal as hell, and they had a few pieces of good information.
Right. And then music, I mean, I remember that when I got to Athens, you were already in the music scene, sort of spreading your wings then.
I was trying to get a foothold. I was trying to get a start, and then my brother and sister needed to go to school, and
I didn't know you had siblings.
yeah, I got a younger brother and a sister, and they both hit college age at the same time.
Right.
And I realized we needed some money in the family, and so I realized we needed some money in the family, and I came across at the same time I came across Hart Pine lumber brokering, and you can make more money brokering Hart Pine lumber in 2000 than you could selling drugs. And so I got fairly deep in that world for 4 years or so until I got them put through school.
So you put your brother and sister through college.
I helped. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got them. My mom and I got them through college, and my brother moved into with me. I got a house down in Athens, and became a permanent resident down there, so he could get in-state tuition at Georgia.
Right. And
Before that, I was just floating around.
right. Lee lived at the biker house for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this whole time you're building your chops as a songwriter.
In my memory, I quit playing for those years. The girl that I was dating at the time says that I didn't quit playing. She says, "No, you still played most evenings when you would come home, covered in creosote and sawdust." Yeah. So who knows how much progress I've made as a musician back then? I don't really. I don't remember having, I don't remember having any musical epiphanies at that point.
How was your emotional life at that time, though?
I was in decent shape, man. I was freshly sober. I was freshly sober, and I was trying to get on the good foot, man.
Right.
I was freshly sober, and I was trying to do the right thing. I was in pretty good shape.
So how did you end up in Los Angeles from there?
Well, I got drunk again.
I wonder how many stories begin with, well, I got to Los Angeles because I got real fucked up.
I got drunk again, and at that point in time, I did not know a single other person in Athens, Georgia, that had been sober 4 years, gone out and got drunk again, and came back and stayed sober again. I did not know a single person in that whole area that had gotten 4 years sober,
right,
gone back out and drank again, and came back and had any time whatsoever. I didn't know not one single person.
It must have gotten pretty bad for you to get sober the first time, though.
Oh, hell, it was terrible. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Didn't you tell me a story about accidentally firing a gun when you were living with the bikers?
Hell, I had an episode one night. I was living with a girl, and she was out of town, and I was drinking, and I came out of a blackout. I came to out of a blackout, and I had a damn pistol in my hand, and it went off right next to my head.
Oh Jesus! Now, do you think you were
in my own hand
contemplating suicide at that point?
I was. Who knows? It was some dark shit. Yeah.
I remember this when you told me the story. We were talking about times that we had accidentally scared ourselves so bad that we thought we were going to die from the fear, and that gun going off was, as I recall, pretty intense moment.
Yeah, I was drunk enough though that I was able to just slough that off and get right back to the drinking. You know?
Yeah, well, you want to calm your nerves.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And so you got sober, 4 years sober, and then you went back out and ended up in Southern California.
Nucci Space and Music Cares became heroes and got me out to Southern California.
Interesting. Did you go there to like a rehab situation?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. So Nucci Space, for people who don't live in Athens or don't know, is this nonprofit that was founded by the surviving mother of a young man, Andre Nucci Phillips, who killed himself, and does a lot of mental health referrals for musicians in the Athens area, and they got you to Southern California to rehab.
Yes, they sure did.
And Music Cares, of course, is the Grammy organization's nonprofit that is health and mental health assistance for musicians.
Yes. Nucci Space. I can't clearly enough emphasize my gratitude for their skill set. I mean, I was impossible at that point in time. Certifiable and not even fit to go for treatment. I mean, I really at that point in time damn near needed psych ward treatment more than I did sobriety.
Right. So you were boozing and using drugs too.
Oh yeah, heavily. I was doing massive amounts of cocaine and drinking elbows of liquor every day on a daily basis, and mixing that with benzos and painkillers.
My experience with people that are mixing pills and booze is that you're never really even dealing with the person anymore. You're just dealing with the pills and the booze.
Absolutely, 100%, and 100%.
But somehow you found your way to Nucci Space.
I did. I found my way to Nucci Space, and they handled me like a damn. They handled me
like ranchers,
brilliantly, like
cowboys handling a wild animal.
They did. They
Yeah.
handled me. They handled me brilliantly, and got me sent to California where I could actually address some of the issues.
Right.
You know, I'll say this, looking back on this, and I've been sober now 10 years. It was 10 years on May 17th this year. And looking back on this now, looking back at it now, looking back at that time period now, I had to be anesthetized, and at that point in time, you know, me being the doctor writing scripts
Right.
for my own anesthetizing was the only option.
Right.
And that's basically how I view that period of time. I was in so much emotional pain that I had to anesthetize myself.
And this was sort of the long-term effect of not dealing with the year where every man in your life died.
Yeah. And then the thing about alcoholism and drug addiction is that it definitely, at a certain point, for me, grew to be its own problem beyond the emotional, beyond the emotional turmoil that started it, and so it took a minute just to. So I've got the original emotional problem that kicked the alcoholism off. Then once the alcoholism was underway, alcoholism and drug addiction, that created another problem that's almost independent of itself. And it took me, you know, the alcoholism and drug addiction became its own exacerbated, complex problem.
It's the snowball of all the shame and resentment of addiction. I think that, you know, you do things that you regret and you know are bad, but then you're just such a raw nerve because you're not really building any days of human experience of acting right. And so you're hit with the shame and resentment of your bad behavior, and you blot that out with more bad behavior, and you end up way down the road.
You mentioned it. I mean, you're no longer dealing with the actual person. You're dealing with the benzos and the drink, and they far overshadow the actual personality of whoever the person is underneath.
Right. I'm sort of interested in the decision to send you to Southern California because I know that Music Care sometimes uses that facility down in Valdosta that I can't remember the name of. Did you have any say in the decision to go to Southern California, or were they just like, let's get this guy out of his network?
I think Linda at Nucci's Space knew I needed to get the hell out of town.
I don't know a single person, by the way, who Linda hasn't helped in some way.
I hear you.
I mean, I don't want to violate anybody's anonymity, but just you can't throw a rock in my circle of friends and associates without hitting somebody that Linda dragged back from the edge.
Yeah.
She's dedicated her life to trying to stop any other parent from having to go through what she went through. I think it's a beautiful.
Yeah, agreed.
So you put you on a plane to Southern California, get you in a facility.
I was as soon as I got off the plane, still halfway having hallucinations and from detoxing, I experienced a sense of relief and excitement and interest in my surroundings. The plant life on the West Coast is like Dr. Seuss. You know, they've got they've got nasturtiums.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different, and so that was one of the first things that I was able to focus on was nasturtiums and the plant life and the air. It just looked different out there to me.
The light in LA blows my mind. Something about being diffused through all that particulate matter in the atmosphere. It's got this almost fluorescent quality.
Absolutely,
you just feel like you're on a movie set.
Yeah, you feel like you're in a damn David Lynch movie.
It's great.
It really is. It's truly wonderful. It's a phenomenon. And so I was able to hit the ground over in Los Angeles, and quick like for me. So I landed in Highland Park in 2005. And this was a good little bit before Highland Park was hip.
Right.
And I landed in Highland Park. Within the first couple of weeks that I was in Southern California, I discovered this men's meeting that met at 7 a.m. out in the valley. It's just right as you on the 101, right as you cross over, the Hollywood Bowl. You cross over that hill. The first hillside that you cross over down to into the valley. That meeting was right there. It's a meeting that meets at a pub. At 7 a.m. AA meeting, a men's meeting. It meets at a damn pub at 7 a.m.
I'm laughing because that's just so absurdly.
Oh, it's perfect. It was just glorious. So I found this damn meeting.
7 a.m. You're still a morning person. Like every time we've ever hung out here in Nashville, you're up at the crack of dawn.
Maybe part of the cowboy deal and taking care of livestock. I'm not sure. Whatever.
Yeah.
I do. I like mornings.
So 7 a.m. meeting at the pub.
Yeah. So in order to get to that meeting, I had to walk 15 minutes to a train, take the train into Hollywood from Pasadena area, from Highland Park,
right.
Transfer and walk another 5 minutes to transfer onto the different train that shot out into the valley, and then ride that train for 15 minutes and then get off at the stop out in the valley and walk another 10 minutes to the meeting. So I had like an hour and 45-minute trek to this meeting every morning to get there by 7 a.m. I made that meeting, 4 times a week for 2 years at least.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
Well, and it wasn't necessarily, that wasn't like, by God, I'm going to do that. There was no discipline involved.
Right.
I just don't have any discipline. I just don't damn have any. I wish I did. I see other people operate on what appears to be discipline, and to me, it's like some other sense, like being able to see 3D or being colorblind. For me, it's like the difference between being colorblind and not colorblind. Like, right. I just simply don't have any damn discipline. I can't make myself do some shit that I don't want to do.
And yet you were up at 5 a.m. for 4 days a week for 2 years
because I wanted to be sober, and this group of guys was speaking a language that I understood,
right?
And I'll refer to this, man, that original group of bikers that I fell in with down in Athens. It was dysfunctional, and some of those guys are dead, and some of those guys are in prison permanently now. But there was a insistent urgency on speaking real to each other,
right?
In that group of people, and I found the same sense of urgency and level of personal scrutinizing integrity from this group of sober drunks out in the damn valley. Is like there's definitely a connection that I discovered in between the cowboys, the bikers, and a couple of different sober groups.
I'm sort of thinking about who is in a 7:00 meeting in Los Angeles. That's got to be some people from the record industry. Because
there's some characters for damn sure.
And, and some people.
There's some people. You'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was 2005.
Oh well, So it's moving on towards 2006.
Right. And you said you've been sober for 10 years, and that was longer than 10 years ago. So I'm sensing there's more to the story.
Oh yeah, it goes on and on. So I got sober for a couple of years out there. And then I got picked up by a damn bondsman from Athens, Georgia, who came out there and got my ass for a $1,800 bond.
You went all the way out there for $1,800?
He just went to get the story. I went and got damn Boo-Ray,
Because he only gets 15% of that.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Financially, it was a horrible prospect for everybody concerned. But bondsmen are characters, in just by definition of the profession.
What charge did you walk on?
Oh, hell, I think it was a damn public drunk and drunk and disorderly or something like that. It was some low hanging shit.
One of those charges they used just to get you out of the bar where you're making trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
It put you on ice for a
minute.
Yeah. That's wild. So, but you were playing music at this time too.
Yeah, I was back. I was back playing music. I was back playing music, and I had just gotten my life kind of settled and set on the West Coast. And I answered the front door at my halfway house in Highland Park, barefoot, in a pair of jeans, no shirt on, and I answered the steel grate door.
The LA door.
Yeah, the LA door. And I opened the door one morning at 7 a.m. and there's this damn bondsman from Athens, Georgia. And I said, and he said, "Hey, Boo, I knew you just needed a ride home." So, anyways, that's the way that went down.
So he flew you back to Athens?
Hell no, he drove my ass in the car in shackles while they did fucking methamphetamines on the dashboard.
Oh.
We halfway back, or a third of the way back across the country, we stopped off in the Dallas-Fort Worth parking lot and sat for 5 hours while his business partner flew in to finish the drive. It was a nightmare.
That sounds awful.
It was terrible.
And that derailed your sobriety somewhat.
Yeah. I've never been able to be released from incarceration and stay sober afterwards. I've never been able to do that.
That's not an uncommon experience, I don't think.
Yeah, I've heard the same. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I've heard. So anyways.
So how long did you? So they came and picked you up you skipped on a drunken disorderly. They came and scooped you up, drove you back across the country like a couple of fucking criminals, and and you get back to Athens and you go in for a while.
Yeah, the longest stint I've ever done in one stretch, that was 10 months, and I did that.
Did you do it in Athens, Clark?
Yeah. And I think I was shipped around a couple times. There were crowding and housing issues, but basically, let my ass sit in a clink there, like cooler style, with the judge deferring my case repetitively, and then finally getting around to the case. And hearing the case and be like, what is he still doing in my route? Get him out of here. Was the final.
So time served. And
yeah.
10 months to wait on your hearing, though, is stupid.
Yeah, it was interesting for sure.
But I mean, I'm not saying there's a whole lot of stuff to be proud of in our criminal justice system. So it's just sort of indicative, I guess.
Yeah, man, that sort of opens up the line of discussion to. What do we do with, now that I'm 10 years sober and sitting here drinking coffee with you on a Saturday morning, talking about mental health and recovery and life, like clearly you and I, being sober, somewhat sane people without any gray area, can clearly tell that incarceration and punitive measures make absolutely zero difference in treating addiction and recovery.
Man, we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole today, but in the last couple of years, my views on that have become increasingly radicalized to the point where I'm beginning to see the validity of the whole prison abolition movement. But let's not even open that can.
Sure. Right. Oh no. Yeah. No. It's a conveyor belt. It's a recycling.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a way of
revolving door. Yeah.
With a segment of the population that capitalism views as surplus people.
And now that is privatized, it is cha-ching, cha-ching.
Right.
As the people will come in and out of the system. Yeah.
Big money for somebody.
Yeah.
So how'd you end? So you get out 10 months later, do you go right back to LA?
Oh, no, I beat around in South Georgia. I was stranded like hell, and my buddy Laney Strickland picked me up and took me on tour. He was setting the world on fire at the time, $5,000 on Friday night, and Friday and Saturday night, he's the top. He was the top of the heap billing act in North Florida and South Georgia and in Alabama, and so he paid me real well to come out on tour with him and open up.
Oh, you're opening?
Yeah, okay. I was opening up and sitting in with his band, Laney Strickland Band, and so I did that for 4 or 6 months and saved up enough money and got back out of the West Coast.
Yeah, but not sober again.
No, but I got back sober. During that time, I got a year, and then I was drunk again for 6 weeks, and then I got another year, and I was drunk again for 2 weeks, and then I got 2 years, anyways, I did. I got back out to Los Angeles. During that time, from the onset, from before the bondsman took me back to Georgia, like all during that time, I had begun recording too. I was doing sessions here and there in different studios, so when I landed back in Athens, Georgia, in 2009, I landed back in Athens, Georgia, and I needed a $10 item to hustle real bad. And that's the point at which I made phone calls and scavenged together all the sessions that of any recordings that I had up and running in various stages of incompletion, and I threw those all onto one CD, but just because I needed a $10 item to hustle real bad.
To sell at shows.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the record that in 2010 I released out of a halfway house. It was my first Americana record.
Bad News Travels Fast.
That's right.
Right. At some point in LA, you were in the hospital.
Oh, yeah. During one of those stretches that you mentioned, I had gotten strung out on opiates while I was out there because I was trying to quit drinking, and I had
you were using dope to get off booze.
Yeah. Okay. And which actually works for a short period of time.
Yeah, I'm only laughing because of just the way that we think about, I got an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this wasn't done with any naivety. I mean, I knew what I was doing. I knew that I was fixing to get strung out on opiates, but it was the inebriation that comes with alcohol. Just you can't play and be coherent in front of people and shit like that. Versus if you can be on opiates and kind of still deal with people. Yeah, and not be slurring and shit like that.
And right.
And produce and sort of function.
I mean, I tell people all the time that one of the great tragedies of drugs is that they can be an incredible productivity tool,
Till there isn't, yeah.
Well, till they try to kill you.
Right, right.
Like, I mean, the Battle of Britain was won on crystal meth.
Right.
Right. Those pilots were jacked.
Right.
And, but I don't know what happened to them after the war. But, and I've known a lot of bands that silenced the inner critic that kept them from writing, like, great bonehead rock and roll that makes
Sure.
you get on your feet,
Sure.
by drowning that inner critic in drugs. But then
Sure.
then the inevitable happens and you fall off the table. So you're doing dope to perform and write and function.
Yeah. Oh, so I end up in another psych ward. I had heard, I was aware of the fact that I needed a medical detox, and I heard word on the street like, hey, so you need to go to this hospital and tell them that you are scared that you're going to hurt yourself or somebody, and they basically have to take you in.
Right.
And so I did that, and they took me in, and I wound up in a psych ward, locked door psych ward, which they put me on a heavy dose of phenobarbital, like sort of like drooling. Drooling, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest type of sedation.
The manageability dose.
Yeah, and so I had about 5 days there that were fairly inebriated and blissful, and then when they pull you back off that in a state-run facility like that, the weaning dosage. It's quick, like they just jerk your ass right up back off that medication.
Right.
So you go from being from being heavily sedated to being completely unmedicated within 48 hours.
Wow.
And
brick wall.
Yeah, brick wall. And when I hit that brick wall, it was devastating. Yeah. I ended up hanging myself in that instance with the hospital gown, and a funny end of the story. In the process of hanging myself, the nurse who found me hanging from the door, when she pulled me off of the door, apparently she pulled me by the neck, by the garment that I had hung myself with. Mm-hmm. And when she let go of the damn garment after she got me unhung, my head hit the floor and busted my nose and split my chin. So when I was in the emergency room a couple hours later, the attending doctor that was running the emergency room, she heard my accent. She said, "Oh, hey, where are you from?" I recognize that accent. I said, "Western North Carolina." She said, "Oh yeah, my husband was down there years ago. He was working as a handler for this author that had written this book that they were shooting a movie about." And she said, "Yeah, they were shooting this movie called Deliverance."
Oh man!
And the author is James Dickey, and her husband was James Dickey's handler.
What a job that had to be.
Yeah, right. So that was the emergency room physician that stitched up my busted chin after I had hung my damn self.
Tell me a little bit. So you're brick walling. You went in for opiate addiction. They take you off of it by hitting you with enough barbiturates to at least stop you from rattling yourself to death as your body adjusts to life without opiates. And then there's this 48 hours where they, quote unquote, taper you. Mm-hmm. And you're alone in a room when all your emotions come rushing back.
Well, I just came to a point where I had gotten to a point emotionally where I had accepted the state of my life, and I just came to a conclusion that, hey man, these go around the sun just haven't panned out for me, And I'm not mad or even sad, but I'm done with this existence and I'm ready for the next one. And that's, I made a conscious decision to, like, I was trying to go to the other side and move on to the next stage of whatever is next. I was ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But this nurse found you and saved your life. But,
yeah.
But in doing so, busted your face up.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Sounds like there's more saving her job than saving your life.
I'll say this at that point and juncture in this discussion we're having about recovery and sobriety and healthcare and hospitals and stuff, is that addiction and alcoholism are so misunderstood that in our world, people like Linda at Minucci Space and any nurse and or doctor in any hospital anywhere in this country that are empathetic and show understanding and compassion for alcoholics and addicts, those people should be treated like special royalty.
Yeah.
Because there is such a vast discrepancy and void of people in the healthcare industry that actually understand what addiction and alcoholism is,
right, how
it manifests itself, and how to treat the people who are afflicted with the dilemma.
Yeah.
So my point of saying this is that when we do come across healthcare individuals anywhere in the healthcare industry that have compassion and understanding for alcoholism, for people afflicted with alcoholism and or drug addiction, those healthcare professionals should be treated with such gratitude and kindness and respect, because they're rare.
I feel like part of it is just the sort of scarcity mindset where there's so little resources to deal with people who have drug and alcohol issues that have bled over into mental health issues, that they end up getting kind of treated like cattle. Like, I mean, if you're wealthy enough to go to Betty Ford Clinic, you're not going to get the same treatment that you're going to get at
a state-run facility. Yeah.
Right. And that's because the people at the state-run facility, their training is constrained by budget. The amount of time they can give each patient is constrained by budget. There's so many things about for-profit healthcare and just the sort of idea that we just don't have enough time and resources to deal with these people humanely. So
let alone any legislation that might be written or developed by people who may be experiencing their own having their own experiences with alcoholism and addiction while they're doing legislation on this stuff, because we are talking about DC, right?
Right.
So the people who are legislating and just making the decisions of, well, here's what needs to go down with alcoholics and addicts. How many of the people here? So I'm posing a question.
Right.
How many of the people that are making that legislature might be making that legislature with prejudice because of the denial of their own relationship with this stuff?
As I think about that, like, what kind of person feels a need to seek the validation of thousands or millions of voters? Someone who's probably got some narcissistic issues that may come from having been the son or daughter of an alcoholic, And
then how do you treat these situations? Exactly.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I had never I just thought of that just now. I hadn't spent any time contemplating that.
No.
That's another spider web.
I'll be on that probably the rest of the day, though, back of my mind. So you get stitched up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you didn't immediately get sober, as I recall. After
Right.
that.
I landed back in Athens, Georgia, and released that record at a halfway house.
Mm-hmm. And that was your last sort of go round, like the halfway house was.
Yeah, I've been sober since then.
So you got back to Athens.
Yeah,
and I remember you were there for 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, and 2 year and a half too.
And so Bad News Travels Fast comes out.
Yeah.
And then on the cusp of the release of 6 Weeks in a Motel, you came up here to Nashville.
That's right.
And you've been working with a lot of really, I mean, I keep track on social media, and you've had a lot of success since then. And you've had a pretty long period of uninterrupted sobriety, which I think is extraordinary.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's hard to correlate the what do you call it? Continued sobriety with the success. It's not hard to correlate the two.
What's your
case?
Daily? What's self-care like for you?
I do a 12-step meeting most days of the week. I do probably 4 a week. I do a morning sort of meditation period of time, and I make I text gratitude lists back and forth with a couple of other sober buddies. I do work out and physical health and so there's a couple things that are regular parts of my life like that.
Somebody told me the other day that my podcast made their gratitude list.
That's cool.
I got so damn choked up when he told me that.
That's cool.
I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, I don't want to start blowing smoke up my own ass here, but
I love that we're both wearing Athens, Georgia t-shirts. You got a Kendercore vinyl t-shirt, and I'm wearing a damn Greer Amps t-shirt.
Nick's one of the sponsors of the show.
Yeah, I'm crazy about Nick.
He's a solid dude.
He's making a Rotovibe pedal for me right now.
No kidding.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that damn Jim Dunlop piece off of my board.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I love those pedals. There's a trashy element to them that I think Nick might find us a way around.
Right. So, do you do any journaling, or is it mostly your songwriting is sort of an aspect of that?
Well, I guess the journaling would be to take place in the form of these gratitude lists, these 10-item gratitude lists that I do on a daily basis.
So it's always 10 items?
What's what?
It's always 10 items?
Yeah. It's just a form. For me, these gratitude lists and working the steps and doing some of the 12-step stuff. For me, a big part of why that works for me is that I like checking items off my list. And I like being like, and what that makes me feel like is, I'm a card carrying member of this sumbitch now.
Right.
Like, I check that item off my list. I've done this, this, and this. I'm a card carrying functioning member of this damn deal. And there's a certain level of confidence and peace of mind that I get out of just being able to check that off a damn list.
Right.
For me,
I'm big into to-do lists lately too. Not just around my recovery, but just like because I feel like I could finish a day exhausted and not feel like I've accomplished anything because I have a very self-critical mindset about myself.
Sure.
And if I look at a list of things, I got to the post office.
Yeah, totally. I got six out of these 10 done.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Do you do any kind of meds? Do you do SSRI or anything?
I have during periods of time of my sobriety. I've used a few different meds. I've used Wellbutrin on and off over the years. I've also had a very effective one for me personally. Was a really small dosage of Ritalin.
Really?
Yeah, it worked incredibly well for me.
ADD's been part of your...
Which I think that was discovered that leads to depression.
Yes.
For me.
Absolutely.
And by treating the ADD, it alleviated the depression. But also I guess both the Wellbutrin and I never took either one of those. Not one time did I ever take two 2 of the pills
Right.
versus 1 as prescribed.
Right.
And I mean, never, not one time in my whole life, ever.
That's progress.
Well, for me, once I became separated, once I'm detoxed and sober, I'm not looking like I mean, don't get me wrong, cocaine was a big part of my story, and
Right.
And so I can't say I couldn't make a statement like, well, yeah, stimulants weren't my thing. Yeah, they were.
Yes, they were.
And so was the slow stuff. You know, I'm not one of
Right.
these people who can make these divisions. Say, well, yeah, I like the slow stuff, and I didn't go for the stimulants, or I like the stimulants, I didn't go for the slow stuff. I like it all.
Right. I liked
that-
anything that took me out of my shitty brain.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, for me, man, this first therapist that prescribed me this really small dosage of Ritalin, that was a breakthrough, and then I discovered Wellbutrin, and then I think I've tried a couple of other things that did not work as well. I think the past couple of years, my to some degree of dysfunction, I stay over caffeinated.
Right.
Basically trying to outrun the depression.
Right.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that going on in my life right now.
No, I understand that completely. I mean, there's a reason that the only product that has the Crash and Ride name on it besides the podcast is an espresso blend.
Right.
But I understand that. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever ruined their life with caffeine either. So, well, man, I wind these interviews up with a series of questions that I ask that are kind of not necessarily related to what we've already talked about.
Sure.
And it's 8 questions. It's kind of always kind of evolving. But
Cool.
They're kind of in the themes. If you're ready, we can jump into those questions.
Do it.
All right, first question. What is the fondest memory of a meal that you've had in your life?
Recently, I ate so my buddy Sean Brock, Chef Sean Brock,
Okay.
who is so important in the moving forward of the history of Southern food and Southern cooking.
Yeah, man. Husk is a true game changer.
Which he's no longer involved in Husk.
I didn't know.
So he's not, but he's starting a new thing. So
here in Nashville.
Yes, and one of the things that he's done is he's brought back seed banks of seeds from crops that haven't been planted in hundreds of years.
Wow.
And so there's this one seed that he planted 10 years in a row, and it never and it didn't bear fruit. And
it's going to be tough getting old seeds. Sometimes they're not biologically active.
They're
anymore.
not climatized.
Right.
Yes. He planted this stem seed 10 years in a row. On the 10th year in a row, it bared fruit, and it was a thing called rice peas. And I actually ate a few spoonfuls of rice peas of the first crop that had been grown in 200 years. That's one of my fondest memories.
How do you prepare rice peas?
They're boiled. They're boiled like black-eyed peas or zippa peas. They're very related to. It's a close relative to zippa peas, which is a South Georgia thing.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And you had that like as part of a tasting, or was it?
It was a Memorial Day meal a year or so ago.
That's wild. I got to find out what that's about.
Yeah.
So I used to have a huge garden.
Yeah. No, I know you've been a gardener. You've been a gardener over the years for
Not
sure.
in the last few years because I'm touring so much. But,
Right.
Man, I miss kind of going out there and growing my own food. So this question, the second question, used to be, tell me about the time. What's the most frightened you've ever been? That question has sort of morphed a little bit because I asked a couple of women that question, and they kind of shot me a look as they were contemplating it, and I had this moment of clarity where I was like, a lot of bad things happen to women in our society, and there's things that have happened that might have frightened them to the point where they don't ever want to talk about it. So the question is morphed into, tell me about a time you were braver than you ever thought you could be. But I know that you've had some close calls, and I'm just interested to hear what your take on either one of those questions is.
Sure. Gosh, bravery and what that is. I'm real hesitant to claim any damn character assets, given my track record. You know. So like,
man, me too.
Bravery might chalk into there in my case, like somewhere in the realm of fools rush in,
right?
So yeah, the bravest thing that I've ever done. With that in mind as the counter, maybe one of the bravest things that I have done in my life is talk openly about my sobriety and my recovery. Maybe that's something that I see.
There's somebody I want to interview really bad who just refuses to violate his anonymity and won't do the show, and is somebody that I look to as a hero, and he's just like, nope. It's in the traditions, and
I sort of look, man. I don't even know. I have no idea who you're talking about.
Oh no, you don't know him. I don't think.
But anytime people start latching on to,
I tell you though,
go ahead.
I don't judge him too harshly because I think that part of it is that he knows that he could drink any day.
Yeah, look, man, I don't judge anybody. Hey, I'll say this. I know I've only recently become willing to talk about this shit.
Right.
I mean, look, it was not, because here's the thing, man. Nowadays, people issue their sobriety dates like fucking press releases.
Right. I've been in treatment for 6 weeks. I'm fixed.
Yeah, fuck yeah. What was the question you asked me? I'm sorry.
About bravery. About
bravery. Yeah. So that's probably like discipline. I ain't got much of it. Yeah.
Right. Well, all right. So the next question is, what is the thing that you've lost in your life that you regret losing the most?
The thing that I've lost that I regret the most is good-natured naivety and unbiased, unfiltered excitement and joy.
Yeah, I think Nashville's hard on that for people because it's just there's so many people working in an unquantifiable realm with art that everyone's constantly comparing their worst insides to everyone else's best outsides, and it's hard not to get a little cynical sometimes and frustrated with your own progress. And all those things. So.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
when do you think was the peak of that idealism for you, though?
I don't know the answer to that question. I will say this. The phenomena of social media, and the phenomena of social media and the apparently constantly declining skill set of human communication, of people to communicate with one another, seem to
go hand in hand.
Go hand in hand and sort of exponentially exacerbate each other.
Right.
Into a realm of just dysfunction, and it's sort of like a funhouse mirror. It's a warped sense of reality, and I hesitate to even use the word reality in 2019. Like, who's to say what the hell reality is? Even
it strikes me like, the instruction we got as younger writers was show don't tell. I remember somebody pointed out that Roger Miller song, counting flowers on the wall, playing solitaire. That whole song is about no point in that song does he say I'm bored with my life, but there's this list of inane things he's doing, and he's showing you what boredom looks like. But we're at a point where everyone's constantly showing via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or whatever, and they're not telling anything. So it's kind of like, well, maybe tell a little bit.
Right. Right.
Maybe just tell the truth, you know.
Yeah, and you know, I've gotten to the point now where it's like, who's to say what the fucking truth is, too?
It's true.
Like, you know, there's just, you know that illustration where there's a guy standing on one side of a structure and a guy standing on the other side of the structure, and depending on which way you look at it, it's either 5 lines or it's 3 lines, depending on which way you're looking at it from.
Yeah.
It's that kind of shit. Like,
Right.
like who's to say what reality is? I mean, the world is literally so complex now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's always been complex, but we're having to process so much more information than past generations did because it's flying at us all the time.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah.
Do you know about the narcissism small differences? You ever heard that term?
No.
It's a theory. I can't remember who the philosopher is, but it's this whole idea that, like, my favorite example of it is with hardcore, with punk music. Like,
Sure.
There's like, oh, we're post-hardcore indie rock, you know,
God.
like, and we're completely different from those other
Right.
post-hardcore, you know.
Sure.
And it manifested itself a lot in smaller communities. Like, oh, we're from this valley in the mountains, and those people in the other valley are just scumbags. You know?
Right, sure.
And I think that we have so many ways of redefining ourselves. A lot of it's through consumer behavior, like Pepsi drinkers versus Coke drinkers,
Sure.
Chevy versus Ford,
Sure.
you know, Fender versus Gibson. That we're losing some of the essential humanity that binds us together with this narcissism of small differences.
Sure. Commercially driven division. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about a time that you've received an act of kindness from a stranger.
Oh, there's so many. So many. My buddy Michael Favorite on the West Coast. He put me in a car while I was out there and went and took care of my belongings when I was uprooted by the bondsman. And you know, there've been a couple of situations like that. I have existed on the kindness of strangers since I was 16. Yeah.
But you lost all those father figures at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, me too. People have taken such good care of me.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place to gig?
My favorite place to gig?
Yeah.
Hell, I love the Troubadour in Los Angeles.
I've never played there.
I absolutely adore Third and Lindsley here in Nashville.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely adore the 40 Watt in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, man. That's a good spot.
That's my top, I think. That's my top couple.
Have you toured Europe?
No, I haven't.
God damn, it's time, dude.
Yeah, I'm aiming at it. We're trying to get that. We're trying to get this new record released over there that just pronto.
It's just so good. It's so good. The attitude about the role that art plays in culture is so different. That
Right.
Actually treated with some dignity. Which
This
is nice.
Yeah, I'm catching a glimpse of it from friends who are constantly to it. I mean, you know, over there, artwork is like bread.
Yeah.
Bread, you know, yeah.
It's just part of your daily life.
It's part of it. Yes, yeah.
When I was over there with the Lolos, that Americana band from Texas, now Portland, it's really just Monk Parker and whoever he's working with. We played in a city or town really in southern Spain, and just the entire town came to the show. There were old people, young people,
Right.
you know, like it was just like, it wasn't a consumer commodity it wasn't a lifestyle affectation. It was life.
There's 2 places in this country that I know of where people respond in what I perceive to be a similar way. In New York, upstate New York, all from basically like from Pennsylvania all the way to damn Saratoga. People clap for guitar at the end of solos.
Yeah.
Like those audiences up there are educated, music, and by educated, I don't mean scholastically educated.
No.
I mean they know catalogs of music and songwriters and guitar players and producers, and they know the material, and they clap at the end of solos. And they're so there's an elevate, and then the other audience, American audience, that is of the same similar quality as Colorado people. Just absolutely
interesting.
They are in tune to live musical performance on a different level than most other places I've seen in the country.
Man, I just did a tour through Buffalo, Canton, Ohio, Pittsburgh with Pinky Doodle Poodle, and I'm just so in love with that part of the country. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I just feel a connection with the sort of post-Rust Belt survivor mentality.
Totally.
And
it's a little bit post-apocalyptic out there.
Yeah. I mean, you look at my hometown of Eden, North Carolina, and it's like a bomb went off.
Right.
And so I just feel connected to those people that kind of got abandoned by the economy. You know?
We just did Buffalo like 90 days ago, or within the past 3 months. We did Buffalo and Western New York. Oh my God, I had no idea.
I love it up there.
The dairy section, the dairy farming, and that whole section leading up towards Buffalo is gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
And
did you go in the fall?
We just went. No, it's springtime.
Yeah, so I guess spring's probably beautiful too. Fall
it was cool. It was amazing. It was amazing. A little bit. I will say this: it had because of the post-economic fallout situation. It had a Stephen King creepiness to it.
I mean, I'm into Gothic.
Me too.
So,
hell yeah, it was there in all its glory. Yeah.
So with that in mind, income and visa considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Maybe so. After hearing you talk about Spain, I hadn't been there yet, but it might be some place like that. I don't know. Hell,
my answer is that town, Benissa,
right,
Costa Blanca of southern Spain. It's just magical.
So, I'm somewhere in between. I'm having a ball in Nashville right now. So I'm still having an absolute ball up here, just immersed in the nuts and bolts of songwriting and guitar picking, and
it's
just
special
24/7.
Yeah, you go to the 7-Eleven and there's people. Well, this guy working there probably is a
100%. I literally am immersed in the nuts and bolts in an empowering, challenging way. I'm immersed in the nuts and bolts of guitar playing, singer-songwriter work 24/7, and have been since I came to Nashville.
Yeah, I like it here a lot. If it hadn't gotten so expensive so fast, I would have probably moved here right after. But my mom got sick, and that's a whole other discussion.
Sure.
Do you own your perfect instrument, and what is it?
I do. I own a couple of them, Patrick.
Oh yeah.
I'm just damn. Look, man, and it's by dumb luck. It ain't no fucking clever thing that somehow I've got this old Gibson CL20 flat top acoustic. I lost the thing coming off of a cruise ship in like 2004-05 or so, right before I went to California the first time. I came off this cruise ship so loaded on benzos that I literally just the guitar went away from me, and I lost the damn thing for about 4 months. Apparently the guitar made it to Colorado and back to Georgia, and I got it back somehow.
That guitar was at Studio 1093 for a while.
That's right.
And I put it on a record.
Yeah. Oh, it records. That guitar records good as hell.
Remember, I
right?
called you. I was like, I got your guitar, and
we
were looking for an acoustic that sounded better than the artist that's here's acoustic, and
track it.
It was tuned to drop D, and I just strummed it and was like, well, here it is.
So that guitar being, there's just I don't know that I could. There's nothing else as far as flat tops or acoustic go that I need more than that rest of my life.
Yeah.
And then I've got a scavenged together telly that I'm just absolutely crazy about now.
That one's all pinstriped, right? I think.
That's right. That guitar. I'm crazy about that damn guitar. And then I've also got my resonator is the Richie Owens signature model Washburn resonator, and Richie's a deep deep Tennessee, East Tennessee boy who was Dolly Parton's band leader in the heyday and worked at Showbud. And Richie's got a couple of signature model Washburn instruments, and this resonator that he and Washburn gave me is just a Cadillac. And so I've got those 3 instruments, and they cover all the bases that I need to cover.
Yeah, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, last question. And this is the newest question. If you could imagine a taxi that can go anywhere in time or space, and you climb in and you say, okay, man, take me home. Where are you going?
Laurel Canyon, 1976. With Christopherson and all those guys out there. You know, Linda Ronstadt and Christopherson and Rita Coolidge. And, you know, like I'm crazy about that music. Crazy about it.
I think the fact that it was so popular causes people everyone's always looking for that obscure artist that they connect with on a really deep level. But like, man, that's just the ubiquity of that doesn't undermine the
Have you seen the Elton John movie?
I haven't.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. It's really great. It's so good.
Yeah.
The relationship of Bernie and Elton is unbelievable. So great.
It's important stuff.
Yeah.
You know? Well, man, this has been great. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, thank you, man. I've totally enjoyed it, and I'm thank you a ton. And as you know, you got a place up in Nashville all the time. I'm here.
Man, I love coming here so much. I wish I was getting more gigs here. I'd be here a lot more, but I guess I could probably make some phone calls.
Hell yeah.
Well, man, thanks.
Thank you, brother.
So that's my interview with Boo Ray. Man, that was great. I like him so much. We've been through a lot together, and it's so funny. Like, I don't really think of myself as sounding particularly Southern, my accent, and then I sit down with someone like Boo, who I kind of grew up with, and man, does it jump out. I love that you can hear the coffee cups banging around and us shifting our weight on the furniture. That was a pretty organic interview. I realize you can probably hear trucks and stuff. I live right by the highway, or not far from the highway, out here in the country, and trucks go by all day. You probably hear those on the intro and outro of my episodes, and you wonder what the heck was going on. My dream is to maybe build a studio in the barn out behind my place, and then maybe get a little further from the road. But, you know, if wishes were fishes, as they say, I'm working on it. Anyway, thanks for listening. Remember, if you're having a tough time, you're contemplating self-harm, and you're having dark days, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. 1-800-273-8255. Folks, thanks for listening. The numbers have been crazy the last few weeks. I don't know where all the extra attention's coming from, but I'm really grateful for it. So, yeah, go vote on the 73%.com thing if you want to support the program. You can support our program on our Patreon page. If you want to sign up for a weekly contribution, you can support our advertisers and let them know you heard about them from us. It's been a real wild ride lately. I'm really enjoying it. In the meantime, you know, be kind to yourself. Take care of yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music. Support your favorite band. And remember that loud guitars save lives. Never